these individuals are paving the way to issue fatwas against us in order that they may instigate violence against us. And I just want to say that if they did so, that would be the greatest mistake that they ever do in the world. If they even think about insinuating that on one of their channels, they will be met with a swift punishment faster than they can imagine. And this is not a threat, it's a prophecy. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear sister and companion Hadil.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصادق. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So the other night I was sent this video. It was uploaded to a YouTube page that had like 1.4 million subscribers. And it was like a Sistani Q&A page. And it was basically a clip that had been aired on a satellite station where there was this very famous scholar who's like a representative of Sistani who had gone on TV and he was speaking for about, I don't know, it was like 7-minute clip, something like that. Half of the video, he was talking about the events that were taking place in Syria, and telling people basically, oh, how the mighty fall. And the second half of the video, he was telling people that we're living in a time of fitness, trials, tribulations, and we have to be careful. And he proceeds to talk about the fitna, that he thinks is most important right now. And then he begins talking about us. He says that he saw a funny fitna, but it's a dangerous fitna. And that fitna is the fitna of people that are speaking about religion and in the name of the Imam, but they shouldn't be. And he proceeds to give reasons why they shouldn't be. One of the reasons he says is because our women go out there and they're not wearing hijab. And so this basically, in his words, automatically disqualifies us from being able to speak about Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, about religion or anything of that nature. He then says that we are basically promoting homosexuality, or we are allowing, or we issued a fatwa. He accuses us of issuing some sort of fatwa to make homosexuality and immorality, he says, permissible. And he begins to accuse us of making pork permissible and of all kinds of things. And then he begins to quote a sermon from the Prince of the Believers, alayhi salam, from Nahj al-Balagha, in which Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam speaks about the time of the Qa'im. And he says that in that time, there won't be a commodity that is cheaper than the book, that there'll be too many religious salespeople. They're going to be using religion as a means to gain influence and power. And he somehow implies that the application of this hadith is valid on us, that we are using this kind of, we're using religion as a way to become famous or to gain money or authority. And then he says that in that time, basically, that nothing is more hidden than the truth, right? And nothing is more evident than falsehood. And he's saying that beware, be careful, because now we're confusing things. And subhanAllah, he is like the truth, and that's what he's calling to, is the truth. And it's so hidden, and we are falsehood, and we are so evident all over the place. And he begins to warn people basically to beware of us. I'm going to play the clip here so that everybody can watch and see for themselves exactly what it is that he said.
فتن هذه يا أخواني فتن، ومن مضحكات الفتن أنه نجد أشخاصا الآن يتكلمون عن حركة الإمام المهدي المنتظر عجل الله تعالى فرجه، يتكلمون عن الانتظار لولي الله الأعظم، يتكلمون عن عزيز فاطمة صلوات الله عليها، يتكلمون وهم على حال في أعلى مراتب الانحراف، ويعتبرون أنفسهم الداعون إلى الله والمنتظرون الحقيقيون، وأنه الناس كلهم في غفلة وهم على حال منتبهون. هذا فالشيء غريب ويضحك إنصافا. فضائيات موجودة، وحدة متبرجة بكل معنى الكلمة، وتتكلم على أنه نحن من أنصار الحجة، والحوزة والمرجعية كلها كذب، إحنا الصادق. هذا فالشيء عجيب، يعني كنا شايفين وكنا كذا، بس ما شايفين هالشكل خداع صريح، هالشكل كذب فاضح. ولكن إن شاء الله تعالى الناس تنتبه. هاي فتن أخواني، فتن هذه. يأتي شخص باسم الإمام الحجة يحلل الخمرة، باسم الإمام الحجة يحلل السفور، باسم الإمام الحجة يحلل الانحلال الأخلاقي والمثلية. عجيبة أنا واقع هذا، والآن موجودين ويقدمون المرأة لصلاة الجماعة. هاي فتن أخواني. لا تقول أنه سيدا ما تنطلي علينا، إحنا ناس نفتهم، أنت ما تنطلي عليك، بس على أولادك شلون؟ على أحفادك شلون؟ أحفادك. أمير المؤمنين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه يقول: وإنه سيأتي عليكم من بعدي زمان ليس فيه شيء أخفى من الحق ولا أظهر من الباطل. راح يكون في الزمن اللي ماكو شيء أخفى على شيء على الإنسان من الحق. الحق مخفي. وين الحق؟ ما حد يدري وينه. وليس هناك أظهر من الباطل. الباطل هو اللي يسود، الباطل هو الحاكم، الباطل هو الموجود. سيأتي عليكم من بعدي زمان ليس فيه شيء أخفى من الحق ولا أظهر من الباطل ولا أكثر من الكذب على الله ورسوله. أي والله يا أمير المؤمنين، أي والله يا أمير المؤمنين، يا أمير المؤمنين، أنا أمس شفت شيء إلى الآن ما متخيلة، أنه باسمك يا أمير المؤمنين، باسمك يا علي، باسم رسول الله، يحللون الخنزير، أكل الخنزير، يحللون شرب الخمر، يحللون الزواج المثلي. إيه نعم يا أمير المؤمنين، يكذبون على الله وعلى الرسول. يقول الإمام: وليس عند أهل ذلك الزمان سلعة، ماكو سلعة، ماكو بضاعة أبور من الكتاب. أبور يعني أرخص. سلعة بايرة، سلعة بايرة، سلعة بايرة عشان سلعة متروكة ما حد إلها. هيك سلعة موجودة بالمحل وعليها التراب، ما حد يشتريها ولا يسأل عنها. وليس عند أهل ذلك الزمان سلعة أبور من الكتاب إذا تلي حق تلاوته. فأيها الأحبة، هذه الحوادث التي تجري لا بد أن نكون على بصيرة من أمرنا، نلتفت. الأخوة المسؤولين اتقوا الله، اعتبروا بسقوط الطغاة، سقوط الكبار، سقوط الظلمة. أيها الناس، اتعظوا بمجريات الحياة وهذه الفتن. لما الأخوة يقول احنا شفنا سيدنا الحوادث اللي الآن تجري في بلاد سوريا، الله يحرسها إن شاء الله بحراسته. يقول نشوف، يقول ذكرنا قبل 20 سنة في العراق. نعم، وقبلنا أيضا دول ومجتمعات. مسيرة الحياة الشكل. بس أنا شقد أكون أنا واعي، شقد أكون أنا مستقيم، شقد أكون أنا إنسان ملتفت. هذا شلون أطلع من هالفتن وأنا سليم النفس، أطلع من هالفتن وأنا سليم الذهن والخط الإيمان والعقيدة، هذا الله تعالى يهدي الجميع.
So basically that's what he's saying. He's obviously attacking us. He's referring to us. And I think that that's an incredible phenomenon that's taking place, that the representative of Sistani, as most people know, is one of the largest, if not the largest, so-called 12-verse Shia Marja, or highest authority today in the scene. He has millions of followers all around the world. He is the hidden hand behind Iraqi politics. And he's the one who made so many fatwas that has basically guided the Iraqi population over this past period, since the American invasion especially. He is the one who has led his people to participate in the American democratic elections. And it is something that we basically think is extremely odd, because the religion in which he is allegedly calling towards is a religion that is not really compatible with this whole idea of democracy and elections. It doesn't work with that. But he seemed to have been able to mesh things together. You see, the Shia, from the time of the death of the Prophet Muhammad all the way till modern times, they have held on strong to the worldview that what the Umayyads did and what the companions of the Prophet Muhammad did, what the Abbasids did, what the Ottoman Empire did, what every single person that led the Muslim nation did from the time of the Prophet Muhammad all the way till now is a gigantic abomination, and something that's going to lead them all straight into the pits of hellfire. They said that the greatest sin that one can do is to elect or support or appoint or back or fight under the banner of what they would call al-Jibt wa taghut, the tyrant, the person who is not appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the usurper who takes the place of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And for the Shia, the place of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad is rulership over the Muslim nation, right? And that's why they are always waiting for the 12th Imam, because the 12th Imam is supposed to be able to ascend back on top of the throne of the rulership, right? And take back from all of the tyrants and the false leaders that were democratically elected or that were appointed in a saqifa or whatever it is. Yeah, because after the Prophet Muhammad's death, Abu Bakr, he was elected by the Muhajirin and the Ansar. That was a democratic process. They chose Abu Bakr. And then Abu Bakr appoints Umar, and then Umar makes this kind of committee of individuals that he appoints in order that they may choose amongst one another the person who's going to succeed himself. And ultimately, they choose Uthman ibn Affan. And the Shia have been wailing and crying and saying what a great tragedy this is, and that these people are cursed, and they curse the companions of the Prophet. They curse the wives of the Prophet Muhammad because they stepped out of this monarchy, the rulership, the appointing of the divinely appointed caliphs or rulers. But when the Americans invaded Iraq, right? And they set to establish a democratic rule. Sistani and the non-working scholars, they issued fatwas that made it obligatory for the Shia to go out and elect Iraqi politicians who were not infallible, who were normal, fallible human beings, and to go out and elect Iraqi Shia political parties, right, that were backed and created by Iran, most of them, and put them into power.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And the people followed them because why? Because they thought that Sistani and the scholars are in touch with the 12th Imam. You see, the scholars, they have all these books out there in the Shia world, and they have these tales, these folk tales and these stories, made-up stories, really. And they have books about them and traditions that basically they delude the people into imagining and thinking that the scholars are in touch with the 12th Imam, that the 12th Imam comes and has secret meetings with them and directs them from behind the scenes, that the scholars are the vice chairs and the successors, the representatives of the 12th Imam, and the 12th Imam is absent from the population, but he's present for the khassa, for the special ones, for the scholars. And so any command from Sistani or from the scholars, all of the Shia are willing to die in order to fulfill, because they believe that Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, is the one that's directing them and enforcing them from behind the scenes. And so the scholars take advantage of this. And they go out and they do things that totally spreads falsehood all around. And they're the ones that actually, I'm surprised that they used that hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam to be applicable to us when it totally applies to them. They're the ones that have been non-stop lying. They're the ones who are the Abu Bakr and the Umars of this time. They're the ones whom engaged and pushed the people to engage in the second Saqifa, the second election that usurped the power from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. You have the first one that occurred in the time after the Prophet's death when they came together and they elected Abu Bakr. And you have the second one that occurred in this time, in which they chose, instead of Imam Mahdi, they chose the implementation of democracy, the American system, even though night and day, they and their rulers, their leaders, Khomeini in Iran, are saying and chanting death to America, death to Israel. But they still are choosing to implement their system of rule and to throw against the wall the book, right? And to throw against the wall the sunnah of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And they're very evil in the way that they implement their tactics and the way that they use religion to brainwash the masses. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about when I was in 2008. Basically, I had traveled to Lebanon, and I traveled to Kuwait, I traveled to the UAE, I traveled all around the region. And when I was in Lebanon in 2008, there were people that were basically selling on the streets and passing out these pamphlets, these booklets. As you can see here, these booklets that were passed out to so many of the educated and non-educated population, right, of the Shia people in the country, and also non-Shia people, would give the impression and outright declare the scholars that are alive at that time and scholars that have recently passed, like Khomeini, to be characters that are mentioned in the end times, in the end time narrations by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. So they would have, for example, this book that was written by this man named Faris Faqih. And in it, it speaks about the characters of the end times. And then it would place, for example, this narration that says, and there will come out a man from Qum. And then they will say, oh, this man that comes out from Qum that calls towards the truth, this is obviously none other than Khomeini. All right. So thereby they lend legitimacy to Khomeini in the eyes of the people. Nobody can question him now. And nobody can question the institution that he oversaw. And nobody could question the country in which he established, right? The so-called Islamic Republic of Iran. And nobody can thereby question his successor. And then they would quote a narration, basically, about a character named the Khurasani. And they said that this character of the Khurasani that is mentioned in the end times, and they kind of try to give him a positive angle, right? And they say that this character of the Khurasani, actually, he's one of the supporters of the Imam, because these narrations that state that there will be these banners that will rush out towards Iraq at some point, the banner of the Khurasani, the banner of the Sufyani, and the banner of the Yamani. And so they would teach that the banner of the Sufyani is an evil banner. That's the enemy of Imam al-Mahdi. And that the Yamani and the Khurasani, these are good banners. And then they said that the banner of the Khurasani, that is, and the character of the Khurasani is Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran. And now these poor people that read this book and they buy into this, they're willing to die for Khomeini. Even though they're Lebanese, they have no loyalty now towards the Lebanese country or the Lebanese people. Their loyalty, first and foremost, is to Iran and to Khomeini, because they've been brainwashed, right, to think that Khomeini is a holy character who's in touch with Imam al-Mahdi, working by his commands, and that actually he's so important that he was mentioned as a character of the end-time narrations.
It's crazy. So they make him a prophesized end-time characters that they were waiting for, that they have to support. So naturally, of course, they would never look at him with a critical eye.
Exactly. So they took all of the characters of the end times and they applied them to their people in order to make the populations, the entire Shia population around the world, but especially in Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, live in this delusion that these scholars have legitimacy and that they're appointed by the Imam and they're actually characters of the end times, and we're all living in the end times, and now you have to have absolute loyalty to the establishment. They also had on this page, for example, as you can see here, they have narrations that is speaking about the character, the Yamani. And everybody knows that the narrations state that the Yamani has the most guided of all banners, that whoever goes against the banner of the Yamani is from the people of hellfire, right? So it's an obligation. You have to pledge allegiance to the Yamani. And it says that the Yamani's banner is obligatory to follow because he's the one who calls towards your companion, means the 12th Imam. He's the one that leads the people towards the 12th Imam. And then in all rudeness, they state that the Yamani is Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, the former leader of Hezbollah. He's dead now, but at that time. And so all these people, they went crazy. It was part of the great popularity. The mystery of the popularity of Hassan Nasrallah was because a huge portion of the Shia population around the world actually believed that Hassan Nasrallah was in touch with Imam al-Mahdi and that Hassan Nasrallah was the promised Yamani whom it was obligatory to support and to follow. That essentially created out of these non-working scholars infallible characters. They made additional imams out of them after the 12 imams. And that's why they obviously called Khomeini, for example, they called him Imam Khomeini, right? And they gave them powers and authorities that no king, prime minister, ruler has. They were essentially head of state and the head of the church, all combined in one. And I just think that it's incredible that these people had this huge amount of power. These people were ruling their own country, Iran. They were in charge of it. And they say that we're the reason why falsehood is spread around the world. I mean, they're the ones with all of the power. They have a country, they have militaries, they have militias, they have influence over other regimes and other countries. They have populations in the millions, in the hundreds of millions, and they're speaking about us as if we're the ones that are muddling up the truth. And I think the reality is that they realize now that they fell into a big problem. And they're like a cow that has been slaughtered and it's taking its last breaths or attempting to, and it's just kicking around on the ground, trying to fight off death. They realized that their grand delusion was falling apart. The character that they led people to believe was the Imani is actually dead. The countries that were supposed to be, and the militias and the groups that were supposed to be representing Imam Mahdi and that allegedly had Imam Mahdi with them, it seems like they don't have Imam Mahdi with them because they're actually falling apart. And they're falling apart at the hands of the Israelites, the Jews, right? First you had Hezbollah totally demolished. Now you have Syria completely destroyed, and there's no Imam Mahdi in sight. And Iran is totally silent, not doing anything at all. You see, the narration stated that Imam al-Mahdi, in order to emerge, right, in order to come, appear, start calling the people, all he needed was 313 companions. In order to actually go out and fight and establish a divine just state, all he needed was another 10,000 companions, soldiers, the halakha. Well, the scholars knew that the people knew these narrations, and they knew that the people recognized that they now have more than 10,313 in just, in Hezbollah alone, let alone in the army of Iran. So how could it be that they don't have Imam al-Mahdi with them? Only if they were not real Shia. Only if they were not righteous. And so because they wanted to project this delusion and this image that they were righteous, they had to propagate this idea that they had Imam al-Mahdi with them. But now it's becoming apparent to the people that they don't have Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam with them at all. Their credibility is falling apart. Their performance was pathetic. The betrayal of Iran to them was quite embarrassing in front of the entire world. They sat there and they threatened and they would march over the American flag. Here, put some images on the screen to show the world what they would do. They would march over the American flag, march over the Israeli flag. They would burn the flags. They would rally up in the tens of thousands, in the hundreds of thousands, and they would chant, "Death to America, death to Israel, death to the greater shaitan," right? And they would chant slogans and swear oaths in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and in front of the entire world that they would defend the Palestinian people. And when the Palestinian people began to be wiped out, and after actually the Iranians pushed them to go forward and commit the whole attack thing that they did, which caused this whole war to start, the Iranians were nowhere to be seen. The one thing that they did was that they sent a couple rockets into the air that made some bright lights. It was like a fireworks show in the sky. Most of them, as they were coming, they were being shot down by the Iron Dome. And then one missile, I believe, it just fell down on top of the head of one person and killed him. And that was a Palestinian person. It wasn't even an Israeli. And other than that, they've been silent. And they were silent as Hassan Nasrallah, who is beloved by many people, and of course, by the Shia. They cried over him so much. He was killed, and in the end, they didn't respond. They didn't do anything to avenge his death. It was almost like he wasn't even worth anything to them. They allowed their ally, Bashar al-Assad, to become destroyed, to have to flee as a refugee to Russia. They allowed his entire regime to collapse overnight at the hands of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda members that are over there, that are taking over power in the region. They did nothing. They didn't fight back. They didn't do anything. They didn't open up their mouths. The atrocities of the ally, right, of the Iranian government, Bashar al-Assad, has all been, it's becoming uncovered day by day. It's being revealed all over the news stations. You have people that are being uncovered from these underground prisons in which they have total memory loss. And they are chained to the walls. You have bodies that are being uncovered that have been mutilated completely, with every bone inside of them broken. Chambers and torture methods and atrocities have been committed underground by the Syrian regime that is now being shown to the world, that Imam Mahdi Ali Salam would never approve of or allow. It's become apparent that the ally of the Iranians has nothing to do with the 12th Imam, and it's impossible to convince the world anymore that these two, jihad have anything to do with one another. These two sides, Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and the regimes that are in the area. The Iranians did nothing, even though they're supposed to be in touch with Imam al-Mahdi, except to go out on TV and basically they gave a speech that the prime minister did in which he said shalom to all the Jews around the world, and he tried to make friends with them. That's the most that they did. And now the Iraqi Marjas, also who've been totally silent, not moving a thumb, not moving a finger. They just want to preserve their own kingdoms, are choosing, instead of addressing all of what's going on in the world and taking action, instead of revealing to the world the 12th Imam who's secretly in touch with them, instead of doing something to prove their legitimacy, instead of trying to save the Palestinians, which they swore to save, instead of avenging Hezbollah and the Lebanese people that have been massacred over the past period, they choose to do nothing. They're choosing to go after us. And I think that that's a testament to something. I think it's basically a testament to the fact that they know that they're losing power. And they know that people are gravitating towards, something else, an alternative. I think that they are scared to death that the 12th Imam or that the Qa'im is going to emerge from under their nose and the people are going to flock to them. I think that while he was quoting all of these nice narrations about the truth being lost in the end times and falsehood being spread, they forgot to mention that all of this tyranny and oppression and the worst couple decades that the Islamic nation has ever seen has all been underneath their administration. They're the ones that oversaw the degeneration of the Muslim Ummah and its defeat in such a horrible way. They forgot to mention that the same narrations and the same Imam who spoke about the narration in which they quoted speak about how the most evil creation in the end times are the scholars. and the jurisprudence of Islam, that they are the traitors and they are the ones whom are cursed, and from them the fitna comes out and to them it returns, and that the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is upon them and all of those who imitate them and all of those who sit with them and take from them and eat with them and drink with them and speak with them. All of those are the worst creation of the earth. Not just them, but all of their followers, and all of those who are sympathetic to them and to their cause. The narrations spoke that the Prophet Muhammad was more fearful over his ummah from misguidance at the hands of these non-working scholars than he was fearful over them for the fitna of the Dajjal or of the armies of Yazid, the son of Muawiyah lanatullah alayh. So here's the thing. And the thing about it is that my followers don't wear hijab. That's true. And something actually we're proud of because the hijab is not part of Islam, actually. And I have here on my channel a whole episode which was dedicated to that topic. And we're not shy to say that is the case. And actually, a lot of people already thought that that was the case. And there's other scholars around the Middle East and North Africa that have already argued that it was the case. And the sisters that are followers of this blessed call, the true call of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, are liberated from this nonsense. And if they want to wear the hijab, they're free to, but they're not going to be forced to wear the hijab anymore, convinced that their voice is something which is an aura or something which people cannot listen to anymore. They're not going to take a back seat anymore when it comes to religion. And their lies are blatant. And he made a lie even in the episode. He said that we're making our women now lead prayers. And that's a blatant lie because we're not even praying. It's not the prayer as it was known under the sixth covenant is not even being practiced under the banner of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam and under the seventh covenant, which we call towards. And that's something that also people can learn about because prayer has no benefit when the nation that is praying is also guilty of beheading the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the narrations were very clear that the acts of worship would be lost in the time of the Mahdi, the times that we are living in right now, according to me, and also according to these non-working scholars, obviously. The narrations stated that when Imam Al-Hussaini was slaughtered at the hands of the Muslims, and not even at the hands of the Jews, he was slaughtered at the hands of the Muslims. It was the angel shouted out and asked God to make it so that none of the Muslims were granted success to fasting a Ramadan in its right time or breaking fast in its right time. And since that time, people have been, they have lost the month of Ramadan. They don't even know what month it's in. And they've been praying and fasting and doing charity and doing acts of worship at the request of these non-working scholars, and they are being cheated and they are being basically deceived.
Yeah.
These scholars, in the name of Imam al-Mahdi, are receiving from the Shia population a tax which is called the khums, a fifth of their earnings. The Shia marjas have made it obligatory that the followers of Shia Islam have to pay this, or else their acts of worship are not accepted. This payment of the khums is only obligatory to be paid in the divine just state to the hands of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, to the hands of the infallible Imam. The mere idea that they are taking this payment from the people means that they are declaring that behind the scenes they have with them Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. And for that reason, I am challenging any of them that claims that Imam al-Mahdi is with them to a mubahala, an imprecation. Mubahala, we're going to call down the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the party that is lying, because they have no connection to Muhammad and the family of Muhammad and don't represent them in any way, shape, or form. I'm also declaring today that since I am the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad, and I come to the people with the authority of my grandfather, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who mentioned my name in his will as one of the successors of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, Abdullah, in the will in which was written on the night of his death. I am declaring all of these scholars to be impure, misguided, enemies of Allah and His Messenger, and I'm declaring them to be haram. Haram to support, haram to talk to, haram to listen to, haram to sit with, haram to pray behind. They are outsiders, khawarij, usurpers of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, whom have no right to stand on the pulpit of the Prophet Muhammad or represent him in any way, shape, or form. I'm declaring myself by the authority of the will to be the supreme leader and marja of all of the Shia population. I am their marja by the authority vested in me in the will of Rasulullah. And I'm not just their marja or their highest authority. I am their imam, and I am the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad and the successor of the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, and the Yamani from the family of Muhammad, Ahmad al-Hassan alayhi salam. These individuals are paving the way to issue fatwas against us in order that they may instigate violence against us. And I just want to say that if they did so, that would be the greatest mistake that they ever do in the world in their entire life. And without a shadow of a doubt, if they even think about insinuating that on one of their channels, they will be met with a swift punishment faster than they can imagine. And this is not a threat, it's a prophecy. We are a non-violent people, but it's a prophecy of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do to them, because their populations are, and their followers are all awakening to the fact that they've been deceived and they've been cheated, and they are extremely disappointed in the lack of action that's been taken by their people. They've been shamed. I am fearful over a time that the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam spoke about, where these scholars are going to be lynched on the streets by their own populations and removed from power, and God forbid, many other horrible things will happen to them. And the narrations are many that speak about how these scholars are actually the front line of opposition to Imam Mahdi, and that when Imam Mahdi comes, they're the ones that try to pull out weapons against him, and they're the ones that issue fatwas against him, and he conquers them. And the believers, they eliminate them from power. I would advise them to that they need to keep their mouths shut, not mention my name on their tongues anymore. They need to step aside. They need to retire like Muqtada al-Sadr has, and these other people. They need to remove themselves from the scene and open up the way for the true Islam to come forward, our true da'wah that embraces, yes, all individuals, all all peoples, of all races, nationalities, creeds, backgrounds, religions, walks of lives, sexualities, everything. The door of God is wide open to all of them. We will no longer fall to the traps which they have tried to set for us, in which they pitch to the followers of one scholar against another, or one sect of Islam against another, or these games that they play in which they send our children off and our family members to die and sacrifice themselves in pointless wars and acts of terrorism in the name of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. These poor people that are dying thinking that they're going to go to heaven when they're actually buying themselves a ticket straight to hellfire because they're outside of the wilayah of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and they're under the wilayah of these false tyrants, these individuals that were described by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad as being the worst scholars underneath the sky. We're not going to do that anymore. And people are tired of that. And people are flocking every single day, Hadil. There are tons of videos that are being aired on our satellite stations, both of them, of new believers. And we're going to increase that over this coming period. We're going to, every single bay'ah, pledge of allegiance, that we get that is to be made public, and we are encouraging all of our followers now to rise up and to send in their pledges of allegiance and make them public so that we can send terror into the hearts of these non-working scholars who are spreading corruption and war and evil in the land, and who want to shut the door on good people, and that they want to issue fatwas that these individuals are heretics. There's no heretics except for these people. There's no impure people except for these people. These are the people that come out with the weird fatwas like Khomeini's fatwa that you can basically molest a child. These are the people that want us and teach our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters, that they should cut themselves up with knives and cut the foreheads of little 2, 3, 4-year-old children. These are the ones that want us, instead of to smack the enemy, they want us to beat and smack our own chests and hit our own heads. They're the ones that are encouraging us to bathe in the mud like pigs. They're the ones that want us to wiggle on the earth and on the ground as if we were worms. They're the ones that are humiliating the Muslim nation in front of the entire world and making us follow these ancient Egyptian and Babylonian mourning rituals that have nothing to do with Islam or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. They're the ones that want to imprison women by forcing the hijab on them. They're the ones that want to say that they're the defenders of women, but at the same time, they work as pimps. So they work as people that are selling prostitutes. They take our believing women and they employ them in this giant prostitution business that they're running in Iran, where people can go forward and they can actually, if they're looking for muta, if you're in Iran and you are a male and you want to have sex with a woman, all you have to do is go to a scholar and you can pay him, and the scholar will find you a woman that you can have a muta marriage with, a temporary marriage with, for an hour or two. You go with her somewhere, you do whatever it is that you want to do, and then in the end, you pay the scholar and you pay the woman, and you get to be a good believer that's going into paradise. That's called prostitution. That's called human trafficking. That's called evil.
Yeah, and it's run by them. This whole industry is run by them.
The whole industry is run by them. And the same thing is taking place in Iraq, and the same thing is taking place in Lebanon. We are starting a new movement. Our religion basically is anti-scholar, anti these people. They started it. They've been issuing fatwas and things against us for a long time now. They've been pushing us around. They've been oppressing our followers, as you can see on the screen here. And as you know, because you've been working in their cases, they've been beating our followers. They've been imprisoning them around the world. They've been issuing fatwas against us. They've been producing documentaries of propaganda that they're airing on Iranian television religion, using my image, the image of the believers, without our permission, framing us to be apostates, framing us to be heretics, mocking us on national television. And now Sistani, his representative who speaks in his name, is coming out and he's saying this thing that he's saying. Well, we have to respond. And now I'm saying that our followers have to propagate this idea that the scholars have no place anymore in society. These scholars that are speaking in the name of religion, they are the agents of chaos and the agents of the devil. And we have to destroy the entire Shia Institute, destroy the entire Islamic Institute in order to fulfill that which Imam Mahdi alayhi salam promised to do. The narrations say that he comes and he demolishes the religion of Islam in order to build it anew, right? Is that not what the narrations state?
Absolutely.
Why would he demolish it unless it was corrupt? It is corrupt, and it has nothing to do with Islam, and that's what it is that we are calling towards. The first step to finding Imam Mahdi, who's certainly not with the marjas, is to declare ourselves innocent of these marjas that are speaking in his name and that have lied and lied for centuries. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammadin and Mahdi wa sallam taslima.
The people that are coming out, and I see them, those who are pledging their allegiance, they're not scared. The only way I can read this response from them is that they're extremely threatened. They're threatened by the believers who are coming out with their faces and testifying that supremacy is to Allah and that the only one who has the authority to speak in the name of Allah is you. And they have no authority. Well, they are the enemies of Imam Mahdi because he said, أعداؤه الفقهاء المقلدون. His enemies are the jurists who are imitated. They know that these people who have come to know you, they are with the only one who is from Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We're not mutabarrijat. We're not women who are immorally dressed. We have all the morality and the honor because we're holding on to the will of Rasulullah, and they are the ones who are void of any morality. And may Allah's curse be upon the enemies of you and the enemies of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad.
Thank you, Hadil. God bless you. To him, to Sistani, to Khamenei, and to all of the scholars that have anything to do with them, I just want to say to all of you, Lanatullah alaykum. May the curse of Allah and Fatima and Ali and Muhammad and Al-Hassan and Al-Hussain be upon you, be upon all of your militias, be upon all of those who support you knowingly. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curse you.